My name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with Larry Hermo. It's September 2nd, 2021. We're at Larry's home in Milwaukee. Larry, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's start by talking about your background a little bit. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I grew up down in the lower Columbia River. There was a small town that was a real feeder to Linfield, and it was called Westport. There was a big lumber mill there, and the principal actually was a coach first, and the principal was a Linfield guy. He graduated in 1928, and he became one heck of a coach while he was at this small school and developed some really good athletes. I'll give you an example. In 1941, Westport and Astoria. Astoria was the basketball power of the state at that particular time, and Westport was kind of the power of the smaller schools. And they agreed to play one another, and they each won at their home court. They each won state championship. Astoria won the big school, Westport won the little one. And so you know that the coach was doing a heck of a job. And there were two guys off of that team went to Linfield, and but poor guys, World War II got them, and they had to go right in the middle of the year, head off to the war, and they came back and they did graduate from Linfield I think about 1947, both of them. They were very good basketball players, and they were very good high school basketball coaches. So, but Westport became kind of a, I don't know what you would say, just a streamline. There were 16 different kids came from that school of 75 kids that went to Linfield and became athletes. Now, have you ever heard of a guy named Art Holton? Mm-hmm. Okay, Art Holton is from that small town, and he was on Ripley's, believe it or not, for basketball, scoring points. So, and he was a heck of a guy down in that community to keep the kids interested in basketball. And so there was 16 different kids that went through there. The school ended in 1952. The sawmill started getting down. They didn't have the timber to really run the sawmill that they wanted. And so we consolidated my sophomore year with West Clatskanie. Mm-hmm. And so there's two small schools of mine, and it's hard to believe, but that little small school of 225 kids, we had to be in the big school league. And my junior year, we beat 3 Portland schools. In fact, one of them was Roosevelt, and they were city champs. And we also beat Medford, and let's see, who else did we play? Oh, the next year we played Grants Pass. We beat them. We beat Roosevelt again for the city champs. 2 years in a row we beat Roosevelt, the city champs. So we had some good athletes from Clatskanie and good athletes from Westport to put together. We were the heroes of the state of Oregon in basketball for 2 years because it was a small school, going down, playing with the big boys, and doing very well. And I guess I had a pretty good couple of years playing basketball in the state tournament. And but actually, my principal got me started to thinking about Linfield. His son was going to Linfield, and of course he had a daughter, which was my girlfriend, which helped, I guess, a little bit. And he started taking me when I was a freshman in high school down to Linfield football games and basketball games. His son was playing basketball down in Linfield. And so then in Westport, it was Linfield. That's all. The bus driver, his son went to Linfield and was a basketball player. That's all he talked about, his son at Linfield. So Linfield was the word around that little town, and it was a good decision for me to go to Linfield. I didn't get a very good start at Linfield, I have to admit. During the middle of my junior year in baseball, I slid into third base and hyperextended my elbow, and I could not play any sports for a year and a half. And it did a lot in my career at Linfield because I was kind of, I guess, somewhat of a super athlete in high school. I earned 12 varsity letters in high school, and I went there, and it started in January instead of September. I was going to play baseball. First practice, threw hard, elbow went out. So there, Okay, then after that, things were not too bad. While I was at Linfield, I earned 5 varsity letters. I played basketball, a couple of basketball, 3 in baseball. So I had a decent career. I wouldn't say it was a great career, but it was decent, even though I had the injury that had a lot of effect. But coming from a small community, and I was raised on a farm, and there were 7 of us kids in the family, and not much money, and what they worked out for me was something that I think I could handle. But when I did work my way through college, I'll have to admit that. Paul Durham looked after us guys that were basketball players, put us as managers, even though it was 75 cents an hour. We got 4 hours a day. Well, anyway, after a short time at Linfield, I started working at a service station. It's no longer there. It was right on Baker Street there. And I worked 24 hours a week in a service station. The guy that I was working for was a tremendous person. He adjusted my schedule of work to what my sports schedule was at Linfield. So I worked there, and as I said, my parents couldn't afford maybe $1 for me at college. So I worked my way through college. I think maybe they gave me a couple $100, but anyway, it wasn't very much. But I'm very proud that I worked my way through college, got my degree, and then I got my master's degree after I don't know if you know about me getting drafted into the military. My first year of teaching, I got my draft notice first day of teaching, 1959. Well, I fought on my school ball board, fought it. I'll be a son of a gun. March, off I went for 2 years. So after I got out of the service, it would be very interesting. Well, my high school principal happened to be the principal of the Yamhill Carlton High School, and 6 days after I got out of the service, I got the job as head baseball coach at Yamhill Carlton. And I had the right teaching position, and the baseball coach was going into private business, and what a career it was. And I mean, you heard of the Tom Jernstead, the Final Four guy? Mm-hmm. You know, he pitched baseball for me for 2 years there, pitched 7 no-hitters in 2 years. And he was a fantastic guy, I think a fantastic person. And then he went to Oregon on the football ride. They wouldn't let him play baseball in the spring because football wasn't going very good for him. So he asked him to play baseball because I think he could have made the major leagues in baseball. He was that good of a baseball pitcher, but they never got a chance. And of course, then he went on the NCAA. You know what he's done at the NCAA. So I was very lucky to have him, and it was the beginning of a good career in baseball at a smaller school, Yamhill Carlton. And then after 6 years at Yamhill Carlton, then I moved on to Rex Putnam High School, and it's just about 6 blocks from here. And it was a new school, and so I was able to develop the baseball program right from the beginning. And we had a pretty decent program, and you've heard of one guy by the name of Scott Brocious, I guess. And so I don't know how lucky I could have been to have a guy like Tom Jernstead, and I had Scott Brocious. But I had a very big number of kids that played college baseball. I retired in 1991, so I've been retired for 30 years. And in 1992, the spring of 1992, I had 12 guys playing college baseball from my school. Big ones, the University of Nebraska, University of Hawaii, Oregon State, Portland U. We had some good baseball players, there's no doubt about it. And so it was a good career, and I guess I did a decent job because I got inducted in the Oregon Baseball Coaches Hall of Fame in 1998, which was a nice reward. They retired my number at Putnam, which has been very nice. So kind of a good career. Mm-hmm. And of course, the other thing I did while coaching, I always looked for players that Linfield could maybe have. And I kind of counted up again the other day. I think I sent 31 different kids to Linfield recruited. And of course, Scott Brocious being one, and that was probably about as easy as a recruit you ever want to meet, because he wanted to go big school, and he tried, I tried, and it didn't work out for him. And I said, we were walking to practice, and I said, bro, I said, would you mind going to Linfield? I guess it'd be all right. Can you imagine? And but he was, Scott, a really smart kid. He only had a couple of B's in high school. His SAT score, I think, was 1345 or some doggone thing. He was really good. Well, he is a pretty good recruit. But as I said, Larry Doty, he's in the department. I talked to Ted Wilson to make sure that he got Larry Doty. Well, Larry Doty, another guy that has had an impact on Linfield. So I'm very happy about some of the people that I sent down there. And I recruited a lot of kids from other schools, Clackamas, Milwaukee, and Oregon City, and everything. So I recruited a fairly good number of kids. Okay, let's go back now, I guess, and start when I was football manager, 75 cents an hour. Well, and you want to talk about 1956. As I look back at the year, I would say that the way Paul Durham started teaching there, and he started developing a program, all of a sudden he got a number of really qualified, good coaches out in the field. And this isn't really, I think the people that came in there in the fall of '54 were part of those guys that played for Paul, sending them to Linfield. Mm-hmm. Well, and you look at another thing, like Ron Parrish was a quarterback. And Ron Parrish was a starter now in 1956, his third year. Hmm. And a lot of those other guys, Howard Morse was a starter, Vic Fox was a starter, Jerry Beyer was a starter. There were none of those guys were starters, and they were in their third year. So they were there to get the job done. Now there were a few transfer guys that came into there, like Dwight Umbarger was one, and I can't remember the others, but there were a few of them. And so the word got out, I think, about Linfield football. And then as time went on, Paul Durham kept track of every gosh dang guy that went to Linfield, whether he was a basketball player or a track guy. And he used to have it in a program, listed all the different coaches that were Linfield guys. And it was just amazing how many coaches were Linfield people. Well, at Putnam at one time, we had 4 Linfield guys, And so I think what established here is that Linfield got the basic thing to win with, and that is to have an honor program that it is not kind of some kind of a phony program. You hear of colleges that have kind of phony programs and stuff. That wasn't Linfield. Linfield, and Paul Durham was one of the nicest, most honest person that I'd ever been around. And if you didn't like Paul Durham, you wouldn't like anybody. He was that type of guy. He sang in the church choir. He sang at funerals in town. He had his dodging with Durham in the McMinnville paper for a number of years. And when I got the job at Yamhill Carleton, he wrote a very nice thing in the paper about me, and my picture in the McMinnville paper and stuff. And that's the type of guy he was. He kept track of Linfield people, and those people helped him out also. Well, then, of course, he was there for, I guess, until 1968 when Rutschman came in. But I think the streak started kind of infiltrating in all the players that we're not going to let it be us. We're not going to let it be us. We're going to continue going. And I think that's what it's been all about. And if you have Rutschman tell you how many of his former players were guys that were college football coaches, assistant college football, high school, how many state championships they won. It was just amazing. Yeah, I hope they have seen that because he did one heck of a job. And so he kept the program going, and he's always been one of my favorite guys at Richmond, too, besides Durham. And, Durham, as I said, he was a guy that if you would meet him and you just see him, right away, he's just, how you doing today? How's your day going? What are you doing today? He just started asking, and he just was that type of a person. In other words, he was an extrovert. And he was a nice guy. And I've always appreciated Paul but after my second year as manager, I became somewhat a pseudo trainer. Now the colleges didn't have trainers at that time, 0. So on the practice field, it was Larry for a Band-Aid, Larry to get a chin strap, or whatever it might be. Now regarding injuries, I did not have any authority to do anything with injuries, so I would just report those to Paul Durham, and he'd send them to the doctor. But I did tape, like prior to every football game, my junior, senior at Linfield, I tape before every football game somewhere between 15 and 20 ankles. Yeah, because everybody taped their ankles. So, as I said, I was kind of a pseudo trainer. Well, I got to know, being around the football team, I got to know all the players, what type of people they were, and I think that was really good. And, well, Vic Fox became one of my best friends because when we were in college, this is kind of an interesting story, we were refereeing 7th and 8th grade basketball in Carleton and Yamhill and Dayton, all around there, and earn a few extra bucks. We were refereeing a game of Carleton and somebody at Carleton. Here's this guy that is just dominating the game. I mean, actually dominating the game. And he was a big, strong-looking guy. And at halftime, we were sitting on the sideline, and Vic says, "Larry, wouldn't it be nice to coach a kid like that?" And I mean, a son of a gun, both of us did. Both of us did. Vic got the football job at Yamhill Carleton. In fact, when he was football coach there, he won 29 straight league games. So he did a heck of a job there, and we became real close friends. And right up until he passed away, and of course the virus came in and it couldn't do it. But my golf course, I'm kind of a golf junkie. I don't know. I know you know that I play golf 4 times a week. Anyway, my golf course is right close to Molalla, and I just about every month I'd go see Vic for an hour because he had some real big struggles. He'd last about 8-10 years of life. He had cancer in his stomach, and he beat that, and then the dementia set in. But regardless of toward the end, he had a nickname for me. I walked into his house, and he'd say, "Wilbur." So he knew me, even though that he didn't even know his kids hardly. But he saw me and he went, "Wilbur." And I'd shake his hand and we'd try and talk. He wouldn't talk very much. Then when I'd leave, he says, hurry back. Because, we were really close friends. And but what a football player he was. And Howard Morris, too. Those are great ones. And I don't mean maybe. But there were others. You can't have just 2 guys, even though they were all Americans. But the team played always with confidence, I think, at that time. That's the key. And coaching, we in baseball, my players, I always tried when they were hitting that they had what we call cocky confidence. Cocky confidence that regardless of how the pitch came in there, curveball, fastball, you were ready to hit it. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that was a mode that also developed in the Linfield football. A little bit of cocky confidence, and hey, we can get her done. Mm-hmm. We can get her done, and it's been going on for many, many years.
Absolutely. So I want to back up for just a second here before we talk more about about football. Let's talk about the school a little bit. So you have been coming to Linfield football games since you were in high school. Mm-hmm. Tell me about your impressions of McMinnville and of the campus as you were kind of first getting to know it.
Well, I got to know it by the coach taking me down there, and I went to the dorm where his son was and stuff, and I really liked it. And then I really liked the McMinnville area, and in fact, after I got back out of the Army and got the job at Yamhill Carleton, I married a McMinnville girl, and she went to Linfield for 2 years, and then we got married. And she was a great gal. Unfortunately, she passed away about 14 years ago from pancreatic cancer that she got, and passed away in 2 months. And anyway, I love McMinnville. The only bad thing that kept me from McMinnville in recent years, that my old mother-in-law, for some reason, she did not get along with my wife, and she was mean to her. And if my mother-in-law was dead, we would build in McMinnville, but she was still alive when we were getting ready to build this house. And so anyway, we stayed here. But I always consider McMinnville kind of my second home. I like the town, I like the college and everything. And I don't think, and I don't want to say there's some bad things that happened in the last few months down there, with it. You know what I'm talking about. Other than that, I've always been positive with Linfield and McMinnville.
So while you were kind of following the Linfield team or managing for the team, tell me about some of the memorable moments for you. Were there memorable games or memorable moments from those years that stand out in your head when you think back?
Well, I'll tell you, again, Howard Morris and Vic Fox. Vic Fox had some of the most wicked hits I've ever seen on the football field. And I don't mean maybe. We were playing College of Idaho, and I don't know what year, if he was a junior or senior, and the punt returner was just catching the ball on the 5-yard line. And Vic Fox, short, stocky guy, but he had sprinter's speed. And he went down, and just as the ball hit that guy's hands, he hit him. The ball went flying, and the guy went flying into the end zone. I mean, that's how hard they hit him. And another time, right in the middle of the grandstand, a team's guy was on a punt return, and he made it right in front of the grandstand, and Vic Fox hit him, and his mask broke and everything, and I'll never forget that incident. All right, that's Vic Fox. Howard Morse. Here's something that I guess Paul Durham showed his team what one guy can do, what you can do on any play. Ron Parrish was a pretty decent quarterback, and he's running and he's going toward the sidelines, right in front of the grandstand, and looks like a guy who's going to attack him. Pretty soon, boom! This guy comes and knocks this guy away. Parrish cuts back to the middle of the field, and looks like he's going to get tackled. Boom! This guy knocks the guy away. He cuts back to the sideline, and looks like he's going to get tackled again. And boom! The guy knocks this guy off, and Parrish goes 75 yards for a touchdown. It's Howard Morse. He made 3 blocks in one play, like that. Crucial blocks in one play. And I'll never forget that, because that was very well known of those guys during that period of time.
So you talked about 1956 and kind of the factors that came into play, coaches in place and guys who were in their second, third, fourth year starting. Tell me about, you also mentioned the cocky confidence as well. So tell me about, as you started to see Linfield football change a little bit, what were some of the were there schematic changes? Was it just purely an attitude change? What changed in those years as Linfield started to win?
When I was coaching, and I recruited a lot of kids to colleges, and I recruited kids from other schools to Linfield. But anyway, I told every kid that wants to be a college athlete, I will not lie to a college coach about you. I'm going to tell them your attitude, and then number two, are you coachable? Are you coachable? Well, I think what we saw happening at Linfield during this, these guys are coachable. Yeah, they were coachable. That they wanted to win. They wanted, and one of the great games that I saw was, I don't even remember what year. It might have been, I don't think it was 56. It might have been 57. It could have been even 58. Linfield's playing OCE, then Western Oregon, and we're behind 14-0, or it's 20-0 maybe. And I'll be a center gun in the fourth quarter. We rallied, and Dwight Umbarger put on a show, a running back, and we won the game, I think 21-20 or something like that. And I think that's kind of the attitude of the guys, that, hey, I don't care, if we have time, we're going to get it done. And I think that's been kind of the attitude of the kids ever since the early days of, like, as I said, starting probably in 54.
You told us about Coach Durham a little bit already. Tell me about sort of working with him, working for him, and kind of his attachment to McMinnville and to the Linfield football team.
Well, see, Paul was a Linfield graduate, and in fact, he coached at Yamhill. And then he went into Portland, and he coached at Commerce High School, and I think he coached at Franklin maybe a little bit also. But Paul, I think, had Linfield and McMinnville back in his head. That's where he wanted to be. And as I said, I've never seen a guy that is more gentle, more guy that you can go in and talk to him. Well, us guys that were managers, this is kind of interesting, because some of us were baseball players, although some of them were basketball players, and there's usually 6 of us. We got to playing stickball. Between, you guys don't remember when there was GI apartments that almost went to the football stadium on the north side, and there was a gap right in there, and that's where we had our stickball games going. And as soon as we got all of it, and just as the practice was beginning, we had to hand out, the guys have t-shirts and shorts and socks and stuff. Once they got on the practice field, we started this stickball. Well, Dermot yells, hey, we need a chin strap. Or other guys, they're out there playing stickball. He fired us one time, 3 times in 1 year. Fired us 3 times. So we'd have to go in and talk to him. And he knew we were all from poor families and needed the money. And he'd go in there, well, guys, we just kind of need help at the right time sometimes. So could you, adhere to being around, and we can get something that we need to keep our practice going? But as I said, we had more doggone fun with that stickball. And all the football players got to know us guys about the stickball thing. Yeah, but as I said, Durham could have said, you guys are out of here, but he didn't. He wanted all of us to be around Linfield, play football, play baseball, and so on. And that's the type of individual he was. And as I said, you could go in and talk to him. Like, he taught a football class, and I think he taught one health class. And he'd walk into that classroom and, come on, students, and he just, vibrant as heck, and how's things going today? Let's get this done today. He was just a vibrant type guy. There was no just kind of mellow type guy. He always kind of expressed himself pretty strongly, but he was a great guy, great guy. Now, like Rutschman, I saw Rutschman play his sophomore, junior, senior year. I don't know, because of the virus and stuff, they haven't had these luncheons with Adrian to have his players come back. Well, I always went to those, and the first time I went to them, and all these guys that played for Rutsch, I stood up and said, how many guys saw Rutschman play football at Linfield? Not one of them. Not one of them. I said, okay, I'm going to inform you guys about Rutschman playing football at Linfield. I saw Rutschman actually playing a Shrine football game in 1950. And now I'm going to see him play. You know, he still holds the rushing record for Linfield. I don't know if you know that. He still holds the rushing record. But anyway, he ran so hard and so tough. He would just bang around and unbelievable. And he would chop his legs, and he was violent when he was running. And in fact, the word got out that Linfield had a wild man in running back. That was Rutschman. That was a rumor that got out. Yeah, there's a wild man running. And well, anyway, it's kind of funny that first time there was a guy named Bob Walker. He was a line coach for Rutschman there for a number of years. And anyway, as I got through talking, Walker says, well, I used to be in the booth. You know, Rutschman wasn't down on the field. He was always up in the booth. And Walker was with him. He says, Larry, I still remember those knees when we were in that booth. He would get excited and those knees were chopping at him.
So what were the biggest sort of obstacles to success that Linfield was dealing with in terms of from pre-1956 into the success? What did Paul Durham and the team have to kind of overcome to get better?
Well, you know, I think the biggest thing that any small college is fighting is finances. Finances. You know, when Davis took over, how many years in a row there was a decrease in students, and Paul was the type of person, though, that I think he was capable of going and sitting and talking to the president and how the importance of football and the athletic program, and I think Paul was the type of guy that could just sit down and say, we need it. We need it. Well, you know, Rutschman was another guy that he put it in another way. He says his football practices was a classroom. His football practices were a classroom. So, and I think when you have those kind of attitudes around Linfield, you're going to get the job done. That's all there's to it. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the kind of alumni coach factory that Linfield became there for a while with people graduating and becoming teachers and coaches. At what point did that become what you wanted to do after you graduated?
Absolutely. Actually, when I graduated, I wanted to be a basketball coach. I was hoping to be an assistant basketball coach somewhere. And doggone the U.S. Mail goofed up. And a contract was sent to the ATO house when I was in ATO at Linfield, and I was already gone for the summer. And at the Sunset High School, would have been assistant basketball coach there, and that's just exactly what I was looking for. And then I got a call from Warrenton. They said, are you still interested in the job? I says, yeah, but I said, I don't have the contract. They said, well, we sent a contract to you. And then the guy did the same thing, left it in a mailbox. Well, now it's getting a long time in the summer, so I finally took it in my hometown, took it in a middle school job just to have a job. And, but then I went into the service, and I was in Korea for 15 and a half months. In the summertime, I told the office manager, I said, is it okay if I go out and try for the baseball team in the Seoul area? He says, will you make the team? And I said, well, I don't know if I'll make the team. I played some college baseball. I probably have a chance. He says, you going to miss any work? I says, I don't know, most likely I will. He said, I hope not if you make the team. Well, listen to this. I go to first practice, 109 guys out for the team. 109 guys out for the team. And so, first day they caught 50. And they gave us a couple of ground balls and let us hit a few. and I did all right. Well, I made the team, cut it down to 20. And the first game that we went to play, I didn't get to start, and he put me in a pinch hit, I got a hit. The next game, same thing, I got a hit. So the next game, he starts me, and I get 3 hits. So now, with the next game, I'm the starter, and I was doing quite well. But we go to practice, and we either practiced or played every day from in April until end of August. And I only worked 3 hours a day. I got a general, 3-star general, sent an order to my commanding officers that I will be released at this particular time daily. So we go to this meeting, and the sergeant who is in charge of our team says, "Guys, we got trouble. We do not have a coach. Our coach, who was working as a civilian over in Korea, the company heard that he was coaching the team, and they transferred him." So he says, "What the heck are we going to do? I don't have anybody. You guys know anybody?" No. I raised my hand. I said, "I went to college to be a coach." And these players said, "Well, let Larry coach." I'll be a son of a gun. I was player coach the rest of the summer. And it was a real experience over there, because during that time, there were a number of guys just like me got drafted. And in the Seoul area, there were 5 teams. Out of those 5 teams, they picked an all-star team to play in the All-Korea military tournament. And so I made that team, and it was really interesting to see the quality of baseball players in the Army. One of the teams, they lost the championship, and they had 2 guys that played Double-A baseball before they got drafted. So they're right up there. But the catcher on my team was drafted by the Dodgers. You got to just Dodgers, and he never did make it. I don't know what happened, but he was a pretty good player. So it was fun, and it was fun to play in the Seoul area, because somehow I got to know this. We call it, the older guys over there in Korea are always Papa-san, Papa-san. Well, this guy was the head of baseball kind of in Korea, and I became friends with him. Yes, well, they had an opening day of baseball for Korea, and he invited my team to play against this Korean team. And anyway, we go down to this big stadium. There must be 15, 20,000 people at the game. Baseball was becoming big in Korea, and it is still today, very big. They won the world championship, I don't know how many times. They've had how many guys in the pros. Well, it was because it was just the beginning. In 1954 was the first year that major leaguers went over and showed them a lot about baseball. And boy, they took it up, because I'll give you an example. When a lot of times we would finish a doubleheader, and you don't know humidity as it is in Korea. And we would play a doubleheader, and we would go back to our compound and shower, and about 2 hours later, we would go down to 8th Army headquarters. We had to go buy our baseball diamond. Those Korean guys were practicing, still practicing. So they were really dedicated to the game and improving the game. Well, as I said, we went down to that game at opening season for baseball in Korea. I guess I looked pretty bad. Anyway, I told my players, and of course I made out the lineup, and I put myself at leadoff all the time. I told my players, I said, this first pitch, this Korean guy's going to throw this thing right down the pipe, and I'm going to knock it out of here. I said, you lie. Well, the Koreans and the Japanese always have some freakish little movements when they pitch. And that was so common over there, it was really funny. This guy winds up and pitches, and here comes this ball. Larry swings, and the ball was out here 2 feet yet when I swung and missed. And you could hear the crowd went, ooh, oh, you know. I meant it did look crazy. But anyway, a couple of pitches later, I bounced it over the fence, so I made up for it a little bit. But that was a real experience playing over there. We played a lot of games and got to know Korean coaches and stuff, and it was an experience.
So for coaching baseball after that, once you came back, what did you take away from what you learned at Linfield when you were just kind of developing your coaching philosophy?
Well, my baseball team, you know, every coach has a philosophy. One says he's going to develop his pitchers, and every run we give up is just like blood out of our body. And boy, the other team's not going to get any runs. Well, that's okay. I can live with that. And then the different guys said, my philosophy was, okay, I am going to develop hitters, and we're going to just hit the hell out of the ball, and we're going to see if you can catch it, and if you can throw us out. So, like when I was here at Putnam, that's when I really got the program going. Every year we kept league stats in the league, and we were either the top hitting team or the close to the top hitting team every year. When I retired, it was kind of interesting. 3 different coaches in the league said, I'm going to go to lunch with you. I said, what do you want to do? Your damn kids were the toughest kids we've ever seen at the plate. Your kids were the toughest kids. They just competed. That's all there was to it. What did you do? So I met with 3 different coaches about having what we did in our hitting. Well, I don't know if you know much about baseball. Like, you could start baseball practice. When I was coaching, now that's quite a bit different. They allow a little bit of more activities where they can have kids during the wintertime. We couldn't have kids at all during the wintertime. It was completely out. Okay, the day after President's Day, we started practice. A lot of times, of course, they were indoors because the weather was so bad in February. From that day until we played our first game, which was usually around March 12th or 14th, we would, each kid that every day, and we didn't practice on Sundays, we always did practice on Saturdays, we got my kids 100 swings a day. 100 swings a day. Yes. We had these different drills that, I don't know, are you familiar with station-to-station hitting? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we did, is station-to-station hitting. And we had good facilities. We had 2 pitching machines and everything. We had a good setup for baseball. And so that's what we did. And I'll tell you, well, you know, in high school, though, my last 2 years, I had, when I say I had 12 kids playing college baseball the year after I retired, well, for the 2 previous years, this is crazy. You know, usually a high school team would hit about, maybe 5, 6 home runs for the year. One year we hit 39, the other year we hit 38. These kids could just flat hit. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the kids was a home run leader up at Washington State for 2 years, and those kids could just flat hit. And so, as I said, we gave them an opportunity, probably, is what I'm saying. I mean, we did slack it, and we did hit the ball. That's all it did.
Tell me about staying in contact with Linfield after you graduated and watching the football program grow.
I always stayed, like, before the virus hit, I would go down and see at least probably 3 basketball games. I became friends with Rosenberg, and so I see probably 3 basketball games. And I would go down and try and pick. Well, the problem we had after I got remarried to Sharon, which is a wonderful, wonderful lady. Anyway, we've been spending time in the whole month of March in Palm Springs. And in fact, we would go down about the middle of February when Linfield already starts playing game, and we'd go down to spring practice and watch the teams practice. So we'd miss all those games in March. So we'd get home, April 2nd usually, and we'd try and pick a home weekend and watch them play. Mm-hmm. But we always went down and watched the baseball game, watched the basketball game. Never miss a football game. Never miss a football game. I've been a ticket holder for many, many years, and I'm not going to quit now. But Linfield, as I said, I hear Tommy Lasorda saying that he bleeded Dodger blue, and well, I bleed Cardinal and purple. That's all there's to it. I've been a loyal Linfield guy, I guess, and it's not going to change the rest of my life. And I'm 85 years old now, so I'm not going to change. And I love the Scott College, and I will continue to support him.
At what point did you become aware of the streak? At what point did that become something you knew existed and were following?
I really don't even know that. I don't even know that. The only time I missed football games was when I was in Korea. That's the only time I missed football games. So, I can't tell you where that streak thing. I know where it started, but I'm not sure where it became a big issue of, hey, we got 25, we got 30, we got 40, holy God. But I'll tell you, when it's the streak of 65 or whatever the thing is now, there's not an athletic team of any sorts in America that's had that kind of a streak. And I don't mean whether it's hockey, baseball, or basketball, or volleyball, or whatever. No team has had 65 consecutive winning seasons. Somebody has to do something right. I used to tell my students, and my baseball players, you don't have to do anything to lose, but you've got to do things right to win. Yeah, you got to do things right to win, and we've been doing things right.
So doing things right for that long, what does that sort of mean to you? What do you want people to understand about the Linfield streak? I
just want them to know that somebody is doing a lot of things right. That's all there's to it. Somebody's putting, it's not by accident you have a good program. There's no way it's going to be an accident. You better put some time in. And I think what is here is the people, whether it was Paul or Ed or Losi or whoever it was, they put the time in. I don't know if you know that Rutschman had those kids were on quite a schedule when they were playing for Rutschman. I don't know if you know that. For instance, let's say they played Saturday. Okay, at that time when Ed was coaching, he and his assistant coach would drive into Portland, take the film of the game, take it home, and Ed would look at that film until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. In fact, I knew about that because when he moved to McMinnville, he moved right next door to my in-laws. So I knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah. Anyway, then in the afternoon, the assistant coaches came and picked up the film from Ed. Sunday night, they showed the players the day before a game. Okay. Then they had practice on Monday. Now they can't practice on Monday. They got to have one day off, I think. So when Ed was rushing, they didn't have that. Anyway, on Monday, they finished practice. They went to a meeting for an hour every night. Every night they went to a meeting. And then they would, so they were tied down to football. There wasn't any ifs, ands, and buts about it. I don't know if Jay Losi continued that type of activity. I do not know. But I know Ed did that. Well, I'll tell you, he knew how to coach too. I'll guarantee you that. Like, I don't think you guys know about it, but I know about it because I was coaching at the time. when he was at Hillsborough High School, he won the state baseball championship 3 times in a 5-year period of time. 3. And 1 year he won the football and the baseball. Yeah, so he could coach. He knew how to coach, that's all there was to it. In fact, in 1965, when I had a heck of a team at Yamhill Carlton, and he calls me up and says, I want you to come over and help me. Well, the principal did a little goofaroo and changed my schedule, and I didn't like it, so I didn't go over. But yeah, he knew how to coach. That's all there's to it. You know, I don't know what it is sometimes, how individuals develop becoming coaches and good coaches. All I know is it takes a hell of a lot of hard work. A lot of hard work, that's all I know. And well, I know in my last few years at Putnam, the varsity basketball coach said, why don't you be my freshman basketball coach? And I said, well, Randy, what are you talking about? He says, no, he says, you did a heck of a job of teaching kids fundamentals of baseball. You did a lot of good things going on there. He says, I want you to do. Gosh, Randy, yes, I don't know. I said, I'll talk to Claire. So I go home. She says, why don't you do it? Well, it did cause me some problems in the early season baseball. But like I would have practice for kids in the morning at 6 o'clock. Then in the afternoon, I'd have either 2 to 4 or 4 to 6 freshman basketball. But then I had to have baseball after that. So I'd get home between 8 and 9. Next morning I'm up at 5 o'clock. Same thing for a month maybe. So that's the kind of thing that I had to do, but it was worth it because it was a heck of a deal. Because the basketball program we had here was also really good. We had some really good. One year, about the third year I was coaching, Randy says, why don't we just divide these kids up this year? I said, I don't know any of the kids. He says, I know them all. He says, we got some good kids coming in. I said, okay. So we divided these kids up into 2 teams. Each team had about a 6'3", 6'4" kid on them, and each team had a good point guard and some other kids. Well, I had another guy help me, and he took over the team, but we practiced together. Our 2 freshman teams went 39-3. 39-3, which is unbelievable. But and of course we went to the state basketball tournament. We took 3rd 2 times. We didn't quite get to the championship game. But anyway, as I said, coaching, if you do a job, is not easy. You've got to put some time in and be willing to put the time in. If you're not willing to put the time in, you're not going to have much success. And as I said, you know, when I graduated from Linfield and I became baseball coach at Yamhill Carlton, he has passed away, and in fact, all of them have passed away. There's 4 of us Linfield guys who would get together someplace, and we would just talk baseball. And we would just talk baseball about, well, how you doing this? How you doing this in practice? How you doing this and stuff? Like Don Schaefer was his baseball coach at North Salem, and a good one. In fact, Don passed away a couple of years ago down there in Palm Springs. But anyway, you know, rundowns in baseball, you always see it, and the kids, little kids, they're throwing the ball, and the guys are running back and forth in there. Well, Don Schaefer says, and I don't know where he got it, but he says, we do a 1-throw rundown. 1-throw rundown. So what do you do? Well, this is how we do it. Whew. Boy, it worked. It worked. You know, the key in a rundown is the guy that has the ball run as fast as he can, because then the guy that's in the rundown has to run as fast as he can, and he gets to a certain point, you give him a fake, and if he stops, you tag him, If not, it's just a little short toss to the guy coming. It's over with. I saw the catcher one time make an unassisted double play himself. Ran two guys down in an unassisted double play. Yeah, the catcher. So, there's certain things you learn from the, like, there used to be publications come out. One was a scholastic coach, and one was athletic coach. And it was baseball season coming up, it was about baseball. And in there was a guy from New York saying it's the absolute proof of somehow defensively squeeze. I'll be a son of a gun, he is sure right. He was sure right, because my last 25 years of coaching, we had one successful squeeze, and the only reason it was successful because we were 5-6 runs ahead, and we didn't put in our squeeze defense. But this squeeze defense is absolutely foolproof. I don't mean maybe. No one ever squeezed against us after that. Like that thing came out. So, as I said, you learn from other coaches. You go to clinics. You read articles, and some of the things work, some of the things don't work. You got to kind of have a filtering system of what is going to be something that's going to work and what's not going to work. And so that's what coaching is about. Yeah. I say coaches are the biggest thieves around because they steal stuff from other coaches and other teams, and that's what I've always said, and I'll never say anything different.
So as you watch Linfield play today or in recent years, are there things that from the Paul Durham era that you still see in terms of the way that the Linfield program is run?
Well, I'll tell you, Paul Durham did a lot for not having really qualified assistant coaches. He did not. He had a lot of guys that played for him, graduated, and then came back. Now, the football team now, like the quarterbacks have Elliott as their coach, and when Ed was coaching, he had his line coach that was a top line coach where he went to Hillsborough High School, and where Paul Durham, he did not have, like Roy Helser, the baseball coach, helped out. Ted Wilson, when Ted Wilson came, he helped out. They were not football people. Now, as I said, the football team now has qualified people in each position, and they do a good job. They really work those kids. As I said, I had to be down in McMinnville the other day, and so it was getting late in the day. I said, let's drive by the football field. Well, we pulled in there to watch. Boy, they have a group here and a group here and a group here. I didn't quite see that with Paul Durham, even though he got it done. I think Paul probably took a tremendous leadership in the entire program. And, but then, let's see, I was trying to think. Now, if he did get some guys that are well-known coaches in his last few years, I really don't even remember that, but he may have. But whatever he did, got it done. There's many different ways to coach. You just got to figure it out. You just got to figure it out and see how in the heck you can do this, how the heck you're going to do that, and that's the fun part about coaching, really, is to see if this works, that doesn't work. Like, if you go to any type of clinic, there's always somebody there who has some bright ideas. You come out there, I'm going to see if this works. Some of it did, some of it didn't. It just depends on how you felt about doing things a certain way. But anyway, I guess I also did a lot of things my own. And in fact, a lot of, when I was coaching, I said, you know, if you can't see it, you can't coach. If you can't see it, you can't coach. So you got to be able to see what is happening, you know, and decipher it. Yes, that's all there's to it. I never, if, like, you know, when I was getting ready to retire, I just see a fairly young guy, and he was a JV coach for, I don't know, 5-6 years, I guess. Anyway, he says, I want you to show me what you see when guys are hitting. Like, when guys are hitting in a cage, I would stand right opposite the cage, and I would watch him every day. Every day. When he came out of that cage, it was nothing but positives. Gosh, you're really doing this really well, okay? We never said anything about a kid in hitting that he did anything wrong. We just need to improve and get a little bit better. So this John says, I'm going to have to watch what you're seeing. He never did. He never did. He never could sit there and focus right in on that hitter to see what he was doing. And so that's what I say. If you can't see, you can't coach, Rivo.
So tell me about what you hope for the future for Linfield and for the football program.
Oh, gosh, I don't know what I would say. I hope they just keep winning. I'm going to support them. And if the streak ends, it's not going to be the end of the world. Linfield's going to have football, and they're going to have good football. But it's quite an achievement for many, many people. Not just a couple, 2 or 3 people, but it's a conglomerate of many individuals that became part of the Linfield football program way back. As I said, I think it got good at starting in the fall of '54 when Vic Fox and Howard Morse and that group came in, Ron Parrish. And now, they had some good football players in the early '50s and stuff, but they did not have a consistent winning. You know, they didn't have any winning seasons. They would have 3 and 6 or something like that. And they had a few guys that came back out of the Korean War. But anyway, I think what you're going to probably see is that there's not going to be a dwindling of no talent. They're going to have talent always, because they have guys that eyes are big and they know and they get a word of where these guys are, and they're going to be this. It's going to be the same. I don't see any change. The only thing I might possibly, you know, if the college runs into some financial problems, you know, there's a lot of colleges have been canceling their football programs. You know.
It's been noted in several conversations that Paul Durham had a somewhat unorthodox coaching style. He was just very calm and not one to kind of chew you out, which seemed to be, just talking with a lot of guys, the standard coaching approach in that era. I'm curious, where do you think Paul got his influence from coaching from? Did he ever talk about Lever and the impact he had on the program, or were there other influences that he drew upon for his coaching style?
You know, I don't know if I could verify anything about his coaching style, where it came from, but I will have to say that Coach Durham, I don't know if I ever saw him really chew out a kid, and I mean really get into his face and right up and really chew him out. I know Rushman did. I knew Rushman did, but I don't think Paul ever did. Paul was, as I told you earlier, he was kind of a mellow guy, and he was really a soft guy, and but he was always positive. He was always positive. You know, I saw many pre-game speeches, halftime speeches, you know, inside there all the time, and he was very soft and easy. You know, we got to do this, we got to do that. We're not doing this good enough. We got to improve here. We need to be better here and stuff. But he never got into the face of players And but you know, I guess individuals like that, and they played for him.
Yeah. It's been well noted that Coach Durham did many things at Linfield, mainly out of pure financial necessity, but also just knowing that he didn't make a lot of money at Linfield. Where do you think his just passion for Linfield came from?
I don't know. I think his passion probably came that, you know, he was a student one time and he was an athlete at Linfield. But I know there's not money in coaching at small colleges. I'll guarantee you that. Listen to this. When I was coaching at Putnam here and having quite a bit of success, I applied for the Willamette coaching job. Okay? They were going to hire me. Then I said, what's my salary? Your salary's going to be $9,800 a year. And at that time, I was at Putnam, and I was making $19,000, $9,800. So, and my kids were fairly young at that time, and so I would have to buy a different house. They'd have to be adjusting to a different school. No, I said it's not worth it. I could have had the Western Oregon job at one time. Well, it's a very similar thing, and I could have had a job at Lower Columbia Community College. So I had a chance for 3 different college jobs that I turned down just because of the money and my family. It's just like when I retired also, you know, you got to think of your family and everything. And I could have been a scout, Major League scout in the Northwest for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 different teams asked me about it. And I said, well, I don't know. I started thinking about it. My wife was an elementary school head secretary, and she had off about 6 weeks during the summertime is all. And so during that 6 weeks, we would run around and have a good time. Might go to Lake Tahoe or someplace. Anyway, if I was a scout, and during that 6 weeks that she was off, I might be in Montana, I might be in British Columbia. Wouldn't be fair to her. So I always thought of my family and my wife before anything else, dealing with the baseball stuff. And so we talk about Durham. I had no idea what their salary was, but I don't think it was very much. But Durham, just Linfield, he was Linfield. He was Linfield, that's all I said. And as I said, I guess part of it came from Lever, and I don't know who else, but I think Paul just had his own way, and it was a good way, I guess. And it wasn't something, as I told you earlier, I never saw a nasty tone of voice from him. And even though we got fired as managers, we would go in and talk to him. It'd be very pleasant, you know, and talk. I know you guys all need the money, and I don't want to get rid of you. You guys are doing a great job, but you got to do a little bit better job, you know. So you're back on the job.
As the team manager, and you know, obviously being familiar with the equipment, as you saw Linfield's equipment to other schools, how did that kind of, was there a noticeable difference in the quality, or just what Linfield could afford?
You know, I really couldn't make a judgment on that. I don't think I could make a judgment. We had decent equipment, you know, when we helped to get that equipment together, ready for those guys to be issued. But the equipment wasn't bad. No, the equipment wasn't bad, and I don't think it's any worse or any better. It was adequate.
It's fair.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the magazine story, talked about the Seattle Ramblers. Do you remember that game at all?
I remember the game. I remember the game, yes. There were guys on there that, I don't know how old they were, but they weren't college age. And there was a big 6'8" guy on there that was just an animal. And he picked up one of our players, picked him up and set him on Jerry Beyer on the sideline, you know, right in front of our bench. But, you know, it was hard to get games, I think, at that time. And Durham just wanted a game and got a game. And it was a pretty good experience for those kids that play against the Ramblers. And the Ramblers they had some guys that were pretty doggone decent football players. They really did. they may not be as well organized, and they were maybe not in shape to play the game like that. Because, during halftime, they were smoking their cigarettes and maybe having a beer, and so they were not, motivated to probably win, but just to participate.
Yeah. You've been going to games for quite a while. For someone, currently or even 20 years from now, just describe what was it like going to a game in the 1950s at Linfield?
Well, they played all their games on Saturday night. And there weren't very many people in the stands. Not very many people in the stands. The stands didn't have a lot of people. There was a few, but it's not like now where all the stands now is taken up in games. And there's some interesting games there. And for instance, one time there was a game against Lewis and Clark. It was so foggy, you could not even see into half of the field. Not even close. And then the fog would kind of shift, and you couldn't hardly see our own sidelines, the grandstand. And Lewis and Clark had the ball down toward the gym now, and they had a good running back who became a good friend of mine later, Nicky Herger. Here he comes up, breaks out of the fog, and he's running right down the sidelines in front of the stands. This Linfield guy is after him, and this Linfield guy catches him about the 10-yard line. And Linfield held him, and we win the game 12-7 or something like that. See, if he'd have scored, we'd have lost. But I'll never forget that game. And of course, another game, and I don't even know what year it was, but now it was after the Columbus Day Storm. The Columbus Day Storm, the lights blew down. So there were no lights after that. Now they're all Saturday day games. We were playing Willamette, and both teams undefeated. Final game of the season, championship at Linfield. Otis Averett and Leroy Fales put on the greatest running back in the mucky mud that I've ever seen. I think both guys ran for over 100 yards that day, and Linfield wins like 27-0. In fact, I was just over Otis Averett's place a week ago today with a barbecue. He's a great guy. And we were talking about that game, and you couldn't even see the numbers of the players after probably the first 10 plays because the field was just soupy. Terrible. But those two guys ran through Willamette play after play, and I'll never forget that game.
Speaking of key players, you've mentioned how well you knew Vic Fox. Obviously, we weren't able to sit down with him for this project. What do you think he'd want if he was able to sit with us? What do you think he'd want to share with us for generations to know about him, the team, and how far Linfield football has come all these years?
I don't know. Vic was kind of a quiet type guy, and I'm not sure what he would share with you, to tell you the truth. And I don't know what he would make any prediction of what future or how things have changed and stuff. As I said, Vic was kind of a self-centered guy, and he did not express himself a lot. So I couldn't tell you what he would say, to tell you the truth. But even though he was a real close personal friend for years and years and years.
That's fair. Or even Howard Morris, for that matter, as well. We weren't able to meet with Howard.
Howard, I think, would be more to express a little bit about Linfield football and his experiences at Linfield and how he saw the football program develop. Howard was just a sweetheart of a guy. And I mean, you wouldn't think that he was an All-American football player if you got to know him. He was kind of a Durham type where, he's just soft and mellow type guy. But when you got him on a football field, look out. Look out. He was a great guy. And he did a great job after he got out. He was athletic director at OIT for many years and did a great job. He was conference chairman and everything. And he was a great individual.
There's been some articles floating around that Durham obviously liked to recruit multi-sport athletes, and the baseball team, something like 50% were also football guys. Was that common for other schools, or was that, you think, specific to Linfield to have that dynamic?
Well, I think what the small colleges at that time, that's the type of people they wanted. Have people that could play more than one sport. And just like he was one of the managers, Jack Riley, and he was a tremendous basketball player, and he was a tremendous baseball player. When he came to Linfield, he's 5'6", weighs 135 pounds. Yeah, and we're in a playoff basketball game with Pacific over at Willamette to go play down in L.A. someplace. And as I said, 5'6", 135. He made 37 points that night for Linfield to win. 37 points. But his career, he averaged like 23 points a game in his career. He was just a fantastic. And I played baseball with him for 3 years, and he was a heck of a baseball player, and he played some pro baseball after he finished. Then, he became head coach, baseball coach at Oregon State. But Jack was a competitor. I mean, he was a competitor. He would knock you down to do something if it's necessary for him to achieve something. He was a competitor, there's no doubt about it. But then another manager was Kenny Davis. He played basketball and he played baseball like me, basketball, baseball. And because I think what you would find, and whether it be Linfield or whether it be Willamette or Pacific, is that there's just so much money in that scholarship pool, and you start divvying it out to individuals for basketball. But if you can get individuals that play 2 sports, then you're going to be a lot better off. And I think that's what Paul Durham had to do that, I think. But I think all small colleges, all private colleges, I think, the finances were not very good there. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate taking the time and sharing all these fun stories. It's been a delight to sit down with you today. So with that, we'll conclude the official portion.
Well, I enjoyed talking about Linfield. I'll guarantee you that. I've had experiences there, and I experienced doing things now for the college, and they started about 6-8 years ago. They call it the Golden Grads. Yeah. We went in with the graduates. I participated in that for 5-6 years, whatever they had it, and my wife did the last couple of years because where she graduated, and so Debbie has gotten to be a real close friend over the years, and gone to the 50-year luncheon, and I try and participate in a lot of things at the college. I love the college. And I will always love the college.